All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tearing into a movie that is just an absolute force of nature. Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, this film is just overflowing with pure, uncut energy, excess, and lines you'll never forget. It's a 3-hour shot of adrenaline about greed, addiction, and corruption that basically became a cultural landmark overnight.
So you gotta ask, right? A decade after it came out, this movie's power to both pull you in and push you away is just undeniable. But the reasons why are way more complicated than they seem. Okay, let's really get into it.
Well, at first glance, the answer seems pretty simple. The film is just a perfect story machine. It's built to get its hooks into you and not let go, throwing the glitz and glamour of this wild lifestyle right up against the gritty reality of a classic Scorsese crime story.
Now, you might think the plot is just total chaos, right? Just one crazy scene after another. But believe it or not, it actually follows this classic, super powerful structure called the story circle. It's a framework that really taps into some basic human psychology, and it creates this character journey that feels satisfying and keeps us glued to the screen no matter how insane things get.
So, this structure, it takes this story about a pretty morally bankrupt guy and gives it the same feel as a classic hero's journey. And that makes his rise and his fall feel so satisfying to watch. You know the drill. A hero wants something, gets it, pays a huge price, and comes back changed. That's exactly why we're so drawn into the story, even when we know we probably shouldn't be rooting for this guy.
Okay, so the story structure is perfect, but that brings us to the million-dollar question. How much of that hero's journey actually happened?
And this is where things get really interesting. The whole movie is based on Jordan Belfort's own memoir. And as this Reddit user nails it, you have to remember who's telling the story here. We, the audience, might just be his newest clients, buying into a story he's selling masterfully.
And when you start digging into what other people who were there have said, wow, a massive gap opens up between what we saw on screen and what might have been the reality. The real-life Donny Ossoff, a guy named Danny Porish, he claims a lot of the most iconic scenes, like the dwarf tossing, were just completely made up. He even says that nickname the Wolf was never, ever used.
Even Belfort's ex-wife, the real Naomi, says it herself. We're seeing his version of the story, and only his. It's pretty incredible. She went on to get a PhD and become an expert in relational trauma, which is a whole world away from the character we see in the movie.
And, central to this whole mythology of excess in the film is one specific drug, a drug that's now pretty much forgotten, but plays a huge role in maybe the most memorable and hilarious scene in the whole movie.
It's wild, because this drug was once seen as this wonder drug, a safer sedative. But its dark side, addiction, overdose, its use in sexual assaults, that led to its complete downfall. The drug's journey from a legit prescription to a totally illegal substance kind of perfectly mirrors the film's whole theme. When you have this unchecked excess, a collapse is pretty much inevitable.
And all of this, the questionable facts, the insane excess, it all leads us to the film's big central debate. A debate that started the second it hit theaters. Is this movie a celebration of greed, or is it a warning against it?
This is where people are just totally divided. On one side, you have people who see it as pure glorification, a thrilling fantasy of wealth and power. But on the other side, people see it as a sharp, satirical takedown of the dark side of the American dream. And it's true. Some reviewers pointed out that a lot of younger viewers seem to really admire the fictional Belfort, totally missing the real victims of his crimes.
And to really get to the bottom of that, you have to look at the director, Martin Scorsese. His style is the key here. His films are almost always exploring these darker parts of the human soul, the gritty reality of his characters. He actually said the film isn't about Wall Street, it's about our culture's attitude of just wanting more. More. So yeah, this movie fits right into everything he's ever done.
But, in the middle of this whole artistic debate, it is so important to remember the real people involved. This incredibly powerful letter from the daughter of one of Belfort's business partners, she called out Scorsese and DiCaprio directly, accusing them of glorifying a psychopath and completely ignoring the people whose lives he destroyed.
So, where does that leave us? What's the film's ultimate legacy, and what happened after the credits rolled?
You might think the story ends with his downfall. But no, in a wild twist, the movie actually became the ultimate rebranding tool for Belfort. He keeps cashing in on the very notoriety the movie shows, becoming more famous because of it, not in spite of it.
And that brings us to that famous final scene. sell me this pen. We see Belfort right back in his element, teaching his sales tricks to a whole new crowd of eager people. He seems totally unchanged, like the only thing he learned from his whole journey was how to sell it to a new audience.
But then, Scorsese does something brilliant. As he pans across the faces in the crowd, he's really looking at us. He's turning the camera on the audience. In the end, this movie isn't really just about Jordan Belfort. It's about the universal appeal of what he's selling. It leaves us questioning our own relationship with ambition, with greed, with the temptations he represents. It's not a judgment, it's a mirror. And that, right there, might be the most powerful and unsettling thing about it.